student organization, in your reflection so far with regards to the approach to the fees must fall debate?
Sure, Cindy. I think, look, the first thing to note is that it's been very fractured across the country. And a lot of this is down to a lot of jostling on the ground between different student leaders that are trying to impose themselves and seek relevance for themselves. We've seen that at various campuses across the country. There hasn't been a clear direction for students as to how this issue needs to be tackled, and in particular the issue around free higher education for the poor. Because in some campuses, even the announcement by the minister has been misunderstood, and then the protests were made around fees, when actually the issues are not around fees, the issues are around free higher education. There's an inconsistency of message, because we know for a fact that SASCO has received instructions from Letuli House to say that we must not take these protests directly to government. And there's divisions even within SASCO and among students themselves as to how it must continue. And the only way that we'd be able to unite people behind the struggle is if we were to abandon the violent tactics that are being held, number one, because they're turning a lot of students away from the protests that are taking place. But if we were to unify directly towards government where the necessary interventions are possible, and abandon the political loyalties that prevent some organizations from joining that call.
But then who's at the center of this protest being divisive or being fragmented, as you say? Bennett, maybe you can give us an indication.
Thanks, Cindy. Firstly, I would want to condemn the protests because they result into banning of institutions. And remember, as courses, we have matrics who are now writing their exams, and next year they would want to be enrolled in universities and colleges. Now, it simply means these protests are just wasting of time. I mean, if we could have had the Minister of Higher Education done his job properly, we wouldn't be having these problems now. I mean, there's NSFAS that is covering people also, but beyond the fact, we all want this free education.
But Benedict, don't you think that, at least from a government point of view, the first or the initial step was made in capping the increment of fees? You're essentially saying that we need to throw the baby with the bathwater and just give free education. Where's the money going to come from?
Well, the money is there. The private sector, it's being subsidized with a lot of money. And the very same minister who's telling us that money is in the private sector is the very same person who should go there and fetch it, not us as students. We don't have too much to JSE, we don't have too much to mine chambers and all those companies, the big companies, to get the money. The government knows how to get the money. I mean, if they have a problem as a government, they will make means to make sure that they resolve that issue, they get the money wherever they get it. But why can't they do it with free education? Why can't they not give us what we want as students? I mean, we are students of South Africa. We do not want any fee increment. We just need strictly pure free education in higher institutions.
But in not participating, Mongi, maybe a perspective from you, in not participating in the initiated process with the Fees Commission, the consultation process to reach a peaceful, amicable solution, is this not this more disruptive to the movement of fees must fall?
No, look, of course, we are not going to make a mistake of speaking on behalf of the fees must fall movement, but we are going to speak at the issue in general, because we are not here, I'm particularly not here representing the movement. But when you touch on issues of consultation and all the discussions that are undertaken in those discussions, we feel highly undermined. You'll remember last year, October, a movement that was national driven went to union buildings. We spoke into a lot of things, but we could only come back with a 0% fee increment. But our feeling is that the government is failing to grasp why students are out protesting. We raise many issues that we are here to demand free education. More than anything, the issue of institutional autonomy. Now, we find it very, very undermining that the minister is taking us back to say, go consult with your vice chancellors and your respective councils. university councils. Now, this speaks to how the minister and his entire government, cabinet rather, undermine our agenda for transformation.
All right, we also heard from Zizi Kodwa, spokesperson of the ANC, that the country simply can't afford this. We are not a welfare state, and that those that can afford to pay for higher education need to do so. I'll just get a reaction from you, George. What do you make out of this? On the one side, students are saying that they're adamant, and government saying this is not possible.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. Thank you very much. Then the only thing is that the minister is undermining the students in my own point of view. The only thing is history is the best teacher. Last year, he increased the fees. And what did the students did? They embarked on a strike. Even this year, does he think that we're going to just let go? Then even though we know that we don't want fees to be increased, then what are we going to do? We're going to strike and then try to convince him not to increase the fees.
Yeah, but he also vehemently says that the fees is something that the students will not feel, particularly those that are being supported by NFSAS and those that are most deserving, which are the poor, and that there is really no impact on the fees that you're currently paying. Are you even listening to what the minister is saying, or is this just a one focus on what it is that students want? Just a response from you.
Thank you, Cindy. What I can say is that not all of us have NSFAS, and some of us does deserve NSFAS, but we can't get it due to some issues or problems that we are facing at the moment. But then what I can say is that the minister is, I think the minister is,
we're trying to find solutions here, and you know, one must laud your courage in bringing this to the fore. And it's not the first time that students had felt being marginalized and financially excluded from higher education. But at the end of the day, there are other issues in the periphery that needs to be considered, i.e. the economy, the reputation of the institutions. Where is the money going to come from? Are you even willing to sit at a table and discuss this further, or is it just going to be disruption of the academic year?
We're willing, Cindy, we're really willing to do so, but then it seems like the minister is failing us as students. He's taking away the opportunity for education as students, so that makes us angry as students. That's why today we are doing so.
So how do you feel that the minister has failed in this regard?
Well, I have to say that I feel that it's less a failing of the minister and more a failing of the ANC government as a whole. The ANC government promised free education in 1994. 22 years later, they have failed to realize that vision.
All right, you're also distorting the policy, by the way, free education for the poor and not necessarily free education to all.
Well, I think free education for the poor, for example, is the DA stance, not free education for everyone.
I was just saying, referring to the policy, though, that, you know, when we do blame game, that we need to do so.
Yes, but even in terms
right
of free education for the poor, the ANC has failed in that regard.
What is the solution from the DA?
Well, I think that we really need to re-look at our funding model. There are countless ways in which we could find the resources needed to fund the poor students. I mean, people have raised the idea of the education tax. Even if you look at the resources wasted by the ANC government, that could have been used to pay for free education for the poor. So I think it's less of a situation of not having enough resources and more of a situation of the mismanagement of resources by the ANC government.
All right, so we're moving somewhere here because it is ideally about getting solutions. So the strategy, one of the points, of course, to make sure that monies are allocated where they're most needed. But just a reaction from you, sir, in how students, if you're not participating in a formal process, you'd be speaking past the principalities, the lawmakers, policymakers, and institution managers. And this can only amount to anarchy. What is your view?
Thank you, Sid. As the students, as we are saying that we want free education, the government must understand where are we coming from. Because we know as most of the students from South African background, they come from a poor background. And those are the things that are making us so that we say we want free education. Because if you can check during when the government was fighting, the ANC government was fighting for freedom, they said that let's fight for freedom, later we'll talk about education. And then they were talking about free education. But for the past 22 years, they have not been talking about free education. And then we want free education.
Have you even read the report, Dr. Blade Zimbande's report, when it comes to what his argument is, in the sense that there are the public universities that are funded at least 70% by the state, and that the fee increment will not impact on those who can't afford, at least the ones that are under 600,000, the so-called missing middle, and the poor are being catered for. You seem to disagree.
Yeah. The problem is one, they are saying that we are not going to be affected, but the matter with there's one thing which is remain. You are still going to be owing an NSFAS once you are done with your qualification. Where are you going to get that money? Because now currently I'm doing my third year and then I'm owing 300,000, excluding interest. You see now, even if they say that the fee increment is not going to affect me, but later it's going to affect me when I start working, where I'm going to be earning 10,000. How am I going to pay that money? That's why we say we need free education.
Isn't there a danger, though, that if you don't pay for anything, then there's less appreciation for it? But we'll get back to that. What's your response, Yusuf?
Well, look, let's start with how much do we invest in higher education currently. And I'll have you know, Cindy, that we currently invest 0.62% of our GDP on higher education. Countries like Ghana and Senegal invest double that. The African continent, on average, invests more than double that. Other OECD countries invest multiples more than that. So when one poses the argument to say, well, look, government's doing its best, it's not correct. In fact, the government under President Jacob Zuma in particular has become a patronage government. And that is why there's less funds to use on what he calls the apex priorities. Because if he calls something an apex priority, and he's called this an apex priority in his State of the Nation addresses from the first time he's come into office, then you're going to fund it correctly. And let's be reasonable. 0.62% of GDP is an embarrassment. It shows that this government doesn't prioritize higher education and training. And if the necessary funds from the current fiscus, we've got a budget of over R1 trillion, if the necessary funds were prioritized correctly, if it wasn't about, for President Jacob Zuma, how many cadres and cronies he has to go and reward for electing him at Mangahung or electing him in Polokwane, if it wasn't about the number of...
I'm just trying to understand you, sir. So you're saying that the Finance Ministry, the Treasury, where the monies are allocated is flawed in a sense, and the priorities are not being focused in education per se?
Definitely. I mean, we made, for example, in the last budget, the Democratic Alliance, and I'm in Parliament myself, we made proposals in the Appropriations Committee. And we found practically where money can be found within the budget in order to increase the funds into the higher education and training sector. And we found it in places like, for example, the military and defense budget, which was budgeted to buy President Jacob Zuma a new jet. Or we found it where our foreign officers, consulates and ambassadors, you know, we have the second most number of foreign missions in the world, only after the United States of America, which is completely unnecessary. So we found the money in the budget. If you prioritize the budget correctly, if you couple that with cutting corruption, we lose an estimated 30 billion rand per annum to corruption alone. One can afford to run a high-quality higher education and training system, and one can afford to subsidize poor students so that poor students have the full cost of their study covered free of charge, converted into a bursary upon the completion of their studies, and to provide support for the missing middle.
All right, let's just hear from Zonele here, Wits SRC, if some of those proposals you're making actually feature in today's mass meeting to try and find a solution, a safer solution to your protest.
So currently, thanks for having me. Currently at Wits, students are sitting and they're looking at some of the submissions they can make. And as the gentleman has said that the prioritization of the Treasury's budget is ultimately the most important thing, because like you said, they're spending about 0.26 of the GDP on higher education, and that's highly unacceptable. I mean, there's no country in the world that's spending so less in higher education. But there's more things. I mean, the sector is itself in a lot of pressure, and that's not simply because of their budget, that's not simply because they're not putting more money into the system, but the the system itself is bad. Because, I mean, some of the things we should be asking is, why is it so expensive? What are the cost drivers, you know? Because you'll find that the universities list tenders that are ridiculous to private companies. I mean, for instance, now we've got police and we've got private security, and the university spends a lot of money on private security. So what makes the running of the university so expensive are some of the questions that we should be asking, because when there will be forensic auditing that happens in universities, you'd find that most of the expenses, I mean, they list things to private companies, they come and fix a globe for something more than 300. And you ask, how ridiculous is this? So there is a serious concern as well as to why is it so expensive.
Yeah, but are you willing to allow the process to run its course, sit around the table, get the report from the Fees Commission, which is due next June, before continuing with your mass protest? What's the reaction from you?
So I think the main concern with the Fees Commission at this point is that the question that they're asking is wrong. And instead of seeking out the feasibility of free education, they should be looking into what models they're going to implement to achieve free education. Instead of them now, the question that they're asking is it feasible? Because we know it's feasible, as we've discussed at length.
Yeah, but Fazia, you know, free education for all, including those that can pay, as opposed to focusing on issues of redress for those that are still in the periphery and marginalized. Don't you think that there's a disconnect as to why there should be free education for all? Surely there's virtue in paying for education if you can.
So, look, free education in on itself is an element of redress. And we must acknowledge the kind of public good that free education is. And we also need to acknowledge that free and quality education is a marathon. It's a long-term goal, right? And in any restructure, particularly one of this magnitude, you address those who need it the most first, i.e. the poor in the missing middle. But ultimately, we're looking at a system in which every single student who comes through the system is getting a free, quality, and decolonized education. Now, the models that we're actually engaging mean that the rich pay through a wealth tax, through a corporate tax. So it's not that the rich are not going to pay. The question is, are they going to pay directly to the university, or are they going to pay through a tax?
Okay. That had been shot down as being discriminatory, if you like, in terms of the rich now being penalized and having to subsidize the poor. But that's a debate for another day. What happens from now onwards, considering just a few months or so that is left of the academic year?
There's a need for national coordination. And I think we've seen it in the fact that universities are springboards, yes, but there's a need for us to nationally coordinate, to say that we need to address national treasury, where's the money going to come from, but there's also a role for the private sector to pay. And for them to understand that it's not just about giving bursaries and scholarships, it's about formalized developing of the sector. So the student movement now needs to restructure and refocus its approach, especially because we can't be applying the same strategies as we did last year. I think we've seen it at WITS. It hasn't worked over the last 2 or 3 days. So we've gone into a total re-strategy, and you'll start to see the discourse is going to change over the next 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah, but are we likely to see an end to the militant turn of events as we saw in the past 4 days or so?
The presence of private security, particularly that is poorly trained, is highly problematic. We also have been subjected to serious police brutality over the last few days. And no one picks up a stone and just throws it. It was out of self-defense. And I think that's the story that's not being told. And we have spoken to the police, we've spoken to private security, we're facilitating discussions to say, give us space. We've never gotten violent until you got into our space and harmed our students first. And that, unfortunately, was not caught on by camera, and that's not the story that's being told.
All right. Welcome back to 8 and 7 Prime with me, Cindy Mabi, on our special edition, engaging student representatives and leaders on finding solutions to the whole debacle around free education and what that means for quality of education, access, and also the institutional reputations of these universities. And we're joined now by Retsepo Moloi. He's the chairperson of Postgraduate Association at UJ. Fazia Hassan is from WITS SRC. And we have Yusuf Kasim from the Democratic Alliance Student Organization, and Mongi Mkhali, former SRC at the former Medunsa. Just a reaction from you, Tsepo, in how this particular audacious move by students can be taken forward if there isn't an engagement with other stakeholders, primarily the Fees Commission and the Department of Education, Higher Education?
Greetings to the viewers. Thank you for the opportunity. So, just talking to your question, nothing can happen without dialogue. So, the problem we're faced with now is there isn't any form of structure that is put in place where all the stakeholders can be engaged and they can have enough say on the issues. So what we're seeing with force now, students reacting to the decision, is really a sign that, look, I think there wasn't a planning from government post the decision of what they will do in terms of the reaction that is going to come out. Again, management of the universities as well hasn't really put across a program where they will be able to at least call it seminars, call it symposia, call it conferences, where they can say, look, let us then put this to a debate throughout the campuses so that we can actually engage. So the other night when I was talking with the SG of SOUS, in the solution, I was saying, look, SOUS needs to come out stronger now because SRCs are not just supposed to be doing this work on their own in isolation. This is the time where they need to actually claim the space in which they are the rightful owners of. But failure of them moving as fast as they should, other stakeholders are going to take this space, and then we're actually going to go into a worse scenario. And I think I'm still standing on that.
Yeah, and I mean, it could be perceived as well that students are not negotiating in good faith by now going on the protest action as opposed to, seeing the process through. When you negotiate, there's certain concessions to be made, and there aren't necessarily timelines that can immediately satisfy your demands, and that needs to be conceded.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, we need to condone the behavior and the reaction of the protection services, South African police services. What they're doing to students is really out of order. I don't know if they don't get enough training on crowd control or they actually don't get instructions that they should not engage the students. Students are in a period of anxiety. Students want to react because there has been not enough and adequate dialogue between them. So what we're seeing in the visuals at VETS, what we're seeing at UCT, at UKZN, I mean, this is truly out of order, and we need to really call them out for what they're doing. And I hear earlier on you were saying that the official response from SAPS is that they did not actually engage the students. That is utter nonsense.
No, what they said, and I don't think we can necessarily dismiss it completely without any evidence, in the sense that there are criminal elements, even among students, those that are opportunistic, yes, that starts pelting stones, etc. But I don't want to focus too much on that. Right. Let's just get onto the solution in that, are you willing to get back to the round table and have a discussion with all stakeholders, as with SRC?
The first question you actually asked, I think, needs to be dealt with, around are we negotiating in good faith, and now there seems to be a growing idea that perhaps we weren't, and we reject that. We must note that the Commission on Free Education was set to report back this year, in October of 2016, and fundamentally because we needed a way forward for 2017. And the delay of the Commission is through no fault of our students. It is through the delay of the Commission itself. Now there's a serious domino effect, because it means that come January or February, there are going to be hundreds of thousands of students who are going to be excluded from the system, financially, not necessarily academically, but definitely financially, right? That then puts a lot of pressure on us as student leaders and on the student movement to say, what are we going to do? Where is the long-term sustainable solution? And it's not there. Covering an increment, and we must quantify what it means to cover an increment. If we're saying on average, tuition fees and accommodation fees are 100,000 Rand, a 6 to 8% increment percent is merely, it's less than 10,000 Rand. And that's all that's going to be covered.
But if we're speaking outside at opposite ends of the spectrum, that's the whole point that we're trying to get to, is that are you willing, to, in light of everything else that you've said, to come back, cool heads, cool minds, and sit down and find a solution going forward?
I think that requires government, it requires the private sector, it requires the university, and ourselves to perhaps take a step back. And that's a very difficult question for me to answer, because it's not something that the student movement has really formally discussed at this point. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of disgruntlement with the system. And I'm sure ultimately with the way student movements work, with social movements, you always find yourself in a space where you eventually negotiate. But I don't think it's fair for me to answer yes or no at this point when students haven't mandated us to do so at the current space and time.
Yusuf.
Yeah, I just want to delve a bit deeper into the issue of the Fees Commission, because I think the media has been lazy as well in looking what are the consequences of the postponement of the Fees Commission's mandate. And I want to correct something as well. The Fees Commission was supposed to report in October. And even if the Fees Commission's recommendations were good recommendations, that it was going to bring in free education for the poor, this is what needs to be done to the budget, whatever, it wouldn't even have been in place for the 2017 academic year, because the only place you can fundamentally change the way the budgeting system works is when the budget is tabled by the finance minister. The only opportunity now is at the end of October, when the adjustment budget, which can't adjust that much, it has to do so within the prescripts of the PFMA, can adjust in the interim. Now, what has happened now, and it's quite correct what my colleague is saying here from FITS, it's very correct that it wasn't the fault of students. It took President Jacob Zuma 2 to 3 months. On the 14th of January, he only appointed the commissioners. In March, the commissioners only appointed the evidence leaders. And then they come and say that they're working in good faith. They're not working in good faith. And let's say that they do come and report back in July next year. That would those recommendations would only be considered in the budget tabled in 2018 for implementation in 2019. And that is why students are angry and saying this is unacceptable.
And I mean, we sympathize with students. Again, what you need to do is to be focusing on your careers and your aspirations as opposed to fighting all these, what also seems to be a highly politicized debate on free education, by the way. How much more does politics just convolute the whole thing in your view? That we're not just dealing with straight-cut issues here, there's also the politics involved.
Yes, thanks. Even if there is politics in this issue, we need to see that even if there is politics, now this issue of free education is not because of an IFP, this one is DA, this is SASCO. This is all about all of us. It affects all the students of South Africa. We want free education.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
But it's clear, you know, Yusuf also said that it's fragmented. You're not necessarily singing from one voice. That's why it isn't the whole homogenous group of students that are participating. There are those that don't want to be involved, and there are those that are actually saying that, you know, you need to pay your way in life.
Yes, for those who are saying that they don't want to join the struggle for free education, they are the ones who can afford to pay the fees of the university. But now we are talking about the people who are, the students who are not affording, who cannot afford to pay the fees, because the fees of varsity, they are very expensive. Now we are saying if we want a short-term solution now, currently, I'm suggesting that why the government doesn't Blades Zimane must come outside and say that now, in 2017, we are going to introduce free education for the poor, and then the 2018, we are going to deal with the richer students.
Yeah, but you're not talking about free education on merit, though. And there's something fundamentally misleading. If you say free education to somebody who may not qualify to meet the requirements or criteria of the university. Secondly, someone who academically doesn't have the propensity to succeed. So if you say free education, I think it's also misleading. Maybe you can clarify that for us. Thanks, yeah.
So I could just
I'm saying the free education element of it. There's certain things to consider. The university has got its criteria, policies, and if you say everybody and anybody qualifies necessarily, isn't that misleading?
Well, I don't think we're necessarily saying that it should be, yeah, if you qualify, then you should study. It's not that we're saying that the qualification should change. If you qualify to study at a university, then you should be able to study for free if you're academically deserving but can't financially afford it. But I also, I mean, in terms of redressing the past, I think that we also need to engage on who is necessarily academically deserving, because I think that, for example, a child coming from middle-class families studying at a middle-class school, receiving better marks, is not necessarily more deserving than a student who came from Mamelodi, for example, went to a rural school, walked 30Ks every day and maybe didn't get the 80s or 90s. So I think in terms of also acceptance of students into our institutions of higher learning, we need to engage with that.
But don't you think that will also erode the quality, because there are certain standards and benchmarks, qualifications that you need to possess before you can study for a particular course or degree?
I feel that we need to, as institutions, create support structures for our students. I feel like if I look at University of Pretoria, for example, it's predominantly black students that drop out in first year. We need to say, okay, fine, this is an issue. How do we create the support structures for those students?
Okay. So going forward, before the end of the year or final exams, what are the students saying? Are we looking at more imminent protests? Are we looking for more disruptions? Or are we looking at least considering the idea of sitting down with all stakeholders? Benedict.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. Maybe firstly to clear the space. Those are just petty politics. Yes, it includes politics and all those things, but the education part of it, it's a societal issue. We can't have two parties of people doing different things, but in the same cabinet. I mean, why should always be the fact that when things are going wrong, there should be commissions of inquiries that are being set up? You are just simply wasting our time. Tell us that you are going to give us what we want as learners, so we stop doing all these things that are happening. And I mean, we cannot keep on playing a blaming game. Whether it's the ANC that has misused the money, whether it's DA, whether it's EFF or whatever. What we need to have as students, and this is our call as students, so there shouldn't be any politics that are played. It should be just plain on a black and white paper that now fine, students, you want free education, we are going to give you free education. And when we're saying free education, we are saying that it should be those ones who are deserving, which is, they are your poor people. I mean, if my father is a manager in apps at ABSA or any big company, I don't have to get NSFAS, I don't have to get a bursary. My parents should be able to pay for me, so that we are able to come with solutions that how do we dissolve these other bursaries that are there and they are not useful to one instrumental structure that are going to fund all these ones who are poor.
How sustainable is that, especially with the next cohort of students who would have to be financed for free by government, and so the cycle goes, as opposed to the graduates then paying back the money? Again, there's virtue in having to earn your keep in life. That's just how it is. So how is this going to be sustained if everybody goes through higher education for free?
Look, firstly, let's dissolve all these bursaries that are in higher institutions. We take them, we place them in the NSFAS account. Simple. And then that's how we are going to sustain it. I mean, you have your FNB, which keeps on building stadiums, keeps on building malls and all these things. Why are you not taking that money and taking it to education? You have your vice chancellors, which are bonusing more than $500,000 each and every year. Why are you not taking those bonuses to free education?
Now you're saying, let's just take back everything that we've invested in the World Cup, the fact that we had to go and submit twice to the world and enjoy all these euphoric moments. We must take all of that back, demolished FNB Stadium as if it never existed. But I get your point. Let's just get a reaction from our panelists this side.
No, I think one major question that I feel strongly on responding on, the fact that students are viewed as not willing to come into the discussion table. I think we're selling a wrong message. And as I have mentioned before, that students have went to present to the highest office in the country, where the union buildings, we tabled from the call for free education with all the three principles that, with the three pillars that fall under the principle. The issue of the issue of transformation, because the sense we are getting is that we are deliberately made to run in circles. When you are saying as the government you are not taking full responsibility on what must happen with fees, you are saying we must go back again and consult with university councils. It's taking us back step, because we had said that the government must take responsibility and ensure that we no longer have institutional autonomy. But more than that, with many solutions that structures that represent students have tabled, even before the minister could announce on the 8% and 8% maximum, it is incorrect that students are not willing to be engaged. We have been engaged. We have SAUs that has went into all universities and communicated with their respective leadership, and all those people have have submitted that these are the recommendations that we have in place. And SAUs has been in endless meetings with the commission that was led
So
by
you've
the minister.
reached your threshold in terms of whether you're going to engage further, and what needs to happen now?
Look, we have reached the threshold, and if government still continue with signs that they are not willing to listen to us, I think as a student movement that is objective, the pragmatic approach is that we must just double the effort.
Yeah, you think that's a plausible, or rather better solution to what we currently have?
Look, Cindy, what do we really need to, let's ask the question, what do we really need to be engaging on now? I think students across the country have made their voices clear. There have been engagements before, a number of times. What really needs to happen now is some good faith needs to be shown. And the way that can be shown is if there is a firm commitment on two things in particular. The first is that in the adjustment budget that is going to come before Parliament at the end of October, that every single unfunded student, as we stand right now, there are unfunded students across the universities. Some universities there's 6,000, some there's 5,000, some there's 7,000. Some of them came through the registration exemption at the beginning of the year, and they've been set up to fail. That every single unfunded student, the money will be made available in the adjustment budget to make sure that those unfunded students are fully funded, and as an interim measure. And then at the next budget that's going to be tabled next year, that the necessary reprioritization is going to take place. And all it needs is political will. It's not that the money is not available, but the necessary reprioritization is going to take place in the next budget for free higher education for the poor, at least with support for the missing middle, to be instituted. If that good faith is shown and that commitment is made, rather than just referring it to a fees commission that we know their recommendations will become irrelevant because of the timelines involved, the earliest that it could be implemented is in the 2019 academic year.
Sorry, Yusuf.
There will be good faith that is shown.
Yeah, support. I mean, obviously students frustrated, and understandably so, and wanting things to move or to be expedited. But we know you can influence policy, but it's ultimately up to the legislature, or rather the lawmakers, to then redirect the monies, as Yusuf was saying. Is this something that we can anticipate in the near future?
Okay, so firstly, I agree with what he just said. I think it's very important that political will actually is prioritized here. So we can come up with all these brilliant ideas and all these plans of how, you know, we should go forward. But if the people who are supposed to implement this, tabulate this in the right platforms, are not willing to do so, we will find ourselves in the same position and basically going worse. And, you know, so, but I just want to talk to, fair enough, we're looking for a way forward now, right? I don't think anyone is disputing this. Firstly, I think what we are seeing now is we're actually seeing a nation which is confused by what the 8% fee hike increase means. A lot of people are actually debating it in a very, very wrong manner. And we're seeing a lot of confusion in the process. The first thing that I would suggest is I think we need, for solidarity amongst the leadership, government South, to actually explain what the fee hike 8% maximum means. Because I think there's a lot of ambiguity and people don't actually understand. The universities are relieved. At least now they got a budget that they can work on, that at least can relieve them from the 0% that was last year. But the rest of the people, though, in the communities, do not understand what's going on. And therefore, I think there's some serious level of arrogance that's taking place in leaving a lot of people behind. So that would be my first. The second, though, is he's talking about bursaries being shifted towards NFSAS. So you've got to understand that, I mean, NFSAS and bursaries are two different things. Okay, there's a distinction here. And bursaries come with their own conditions from different stakeholders, while NFSAS is strictly government, right? So that is not really taking us anywhere. But I think in the spirit of going forward, first of all, political tensions, political differences, political shenanigans, we have to accept. We're a country of democracy. There will be interests. We can't shy away from this. but in the spirit of having a common goal that we do ultimately want to achieve free education, then we need to obviously forcefully work together. We need to find each other on this. It's not going to be easy, no one is saying this, but we need all the role players to actually at least be, turn the page and be on the same spirit.
Yeah, I mean, part of the solution, or at least the perspective that I was hoping would come out, is that it's wonderful to have free education and a highly qualified population that is sitting with unemployment. We know that there are graduates currently that are unemployed. So how then do you ensure that there's a market for these high skills that will be produced from the institutions?
This is, of course, why we're saying that there's a need for a structural change in the general society. And our universities are the way they are because that's how South Africa is. So, of course, like you've alluded, that there is going to be serious policy changes that need to take place. Because looking at in other countries that have implemented free education, have created spaces to make sure that the young youth was able to get into forms of employment, which we're also discussing that perhaps we do not necessarily need to have everyone entering universities, but we could go on skill search and open our nursing colleges, teaching colleges, and so forth, to make sure that we create a space where we train our people and put them into a system. So there's a greater structural change, and I'm glad it has come out from the panel that we're going to need serious political will. This conversation is 10 years more old of free and quality education. We're here now and we can't turn back. So we're going to need some serious political will, we're going to need some serious changes and some revamping of the system, some serious transformation into the system. Because if we're going to transform universities, we have to transform the economy. And if anyone can do that, is the government that must be able to create spaces or an economy that's conducible, that is going to be able to absorb the young graduates into, I mean, some people graduate and they don't get jobs. This is serious offense to people that went to university. This is why it's serious that the government creates that space.
Yeah, maybe we're looking at the pockets of excellence, and I'm not by any means trying to undermine the other public universities, but we know that there is a level, albeit a real perception, that your key areas of excellence, your roads, UCT, VITS, etc., is where everybody wants to go to, because we still have the notion that public universities are inferior and therefore your qualification won't get you very far in life. Is that part of the reason why we're seeing these protests?
Yes.
No, I meant, former Bantustan.
The discussion here is the dichotomy between historically so-called white and historically black universities. And not only the dichotomy that's been created by the current, by the way, by the current so-called solution by the minister. It's very divisive. It seeks to set up your historically advantaged versus historically disadvantaged institutions against each other. But we must acknowledge that there are fundamentally incorrect situations there. It cannot be that TUT has been protesting for free education for the last 20 years, and that the moment WITS, UCT, Stellenbosch picks up on it, that all of a sudden it's an issue. Those are things that we need to defeat. But we also need to understand that we've not been investing in our historically disadvantaged institutions as much as we should be. There's a reason why WITS, UCT, roads, for some reason, are considered the highest. It's because that there's been more investment, but they also, during apartheid times, were pushed to the front. And those are things that we're going to take very, very long for us to overcome, but it speaks to that structural solution.
All right, so we're going to have to leave it there for now and just give you a chronicle update of what happened in the events leading up from Tuesday and culminating in violent clashes with police and students. And this is all in the Fees Must Fall debate. Do stay with ANN7.